So did Kevin Durant get Brooklyn Nets head coach Kenny Atkinson fired? Like, I didn't know that I was going to do this segment until I started thinking about it. And then I wrote down some of the things that I was thinking, and I ended up going, oh man, I got a page full of notes here. I should probably do a segment on this because it's fascinating in that I think it's an insight into the star power of superstars and how there's really only like 4 or 5 guys in the entire NBA that can absolutely change your franchise, can immediately make you better and make you an NBA final contender. And Kevin Durant is one of them. Coincidentally, Kyrie Irving is not, even as he tries to act like that. And the other guys that I would list in there are Anthony Davis and LeBron James. They play together. Kawhi Leonard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. After that, it gets to be a short list, right? Because those are the guys that you would absolutely sell out to go get. But like the first thing I wrote was like Kevin Durant isn't even playing. So what would he even have to do with this, right? I don't think that he did. And as much as we want to throw things at the feet of one Kevin Durant, I can't do that right now unless we're just saying that by not having an absolute vote of confidence for Kenny Atkinson, he got the guy fired. Because if Kevin Durant wanted Kenny Atkinson to be his head coach, he would be his head coach. I think that the only reason that he didn't try to get Steve Kerr run out of Golden State at the time is because Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson would have probably fisted him in the face with their, and it would have been over. Because Draymond Green walks up to Kevin Durant, says, leave, we don't need you. And turns out they probably don't. They suck this year, but none of those dudes have actually been playing much. I mean, we saw Steph Curry for the first time in months, just like a week ago. But in thinking about this, Kenny Atkinson goes 118 and 190 as a head coach, right? So that's not great, but also I don't think it has the full scope of what he was doing with Brooklyn, which is essentially what Brett Brown was doing with Philly. You get the younger guys, you grow the younger guys up, you hope to go get some superstars to fill it out, because like next year is the year for the Nets, and it might be the most important season in Nets history, let alone Brooklyn Nets history, as much as that's just not one of them squads that everybody wants to ride for because they're new, and the Knicks are there, and the Knicks are royalty in the NBA, but it also does not really take into account what Karis LeVert has turned into. I mean, dropping 40. What Jarrett Allen is. Like, he's keeping DeAndre Jordan on the bench because he's an absolutely better center. Like, I think Jarrett Allen is Nerlens Noel 2.0, and Nerlens Noel has been playing his butt off this year. I mean, he looked great in OKC's win against the Knicks. Also doesn't take into account Joe Harris and what a great shooter he's turned out to be, and Spencer Dinwiddie, who's growing into a great guard. But they also don't get a whole lot of post touches, and we knew that this was a throwaway season for them. But even with a sub 500 record, they're going to make the playoffs. And I don't care who you are, making the playoffs is better than not making the playoffs, all right? I'm not here for your lottery picks. I'm not here for sucking so that you can hopefully get better with some talent that's unproven, especially in this draft when we're talking about LiAngelo Ball and LaMelo Ball, right? LaMelo Ball might be a top 5 pick. LiAngelo, I think I got a segment about that, but we'll see. And then I'm getting to, look, why is it that the Brooklyn Nets are treating Kenny Atkinson like he's some sort of coach that they can trade up from, like an oil magnate who is looking to go and get an Anna Nicole? Because what's the difference between Frank Vogel and Kenny Atkinson as a head coach? None. What's the difference between Eric Spoelstra in 2011 and Kenny Atkinson now? None. Like, when you talk about superstar head coaches, you're talking about Steve Kerr, and that's about it, right? I mean, Mike D'Antoni is going into the final year of his contract with Houston, but I'm not sure that you want Mike D'Antoni in Brooklyn saying, hey, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, just jack more threes. What you want is a guy that had been with the organization for as long as Atkinson had, and he has something that both Spoelstra and Vogel don't have, which is a love for New York. He grew up in Long Island. His kids love Brooklyn. He loved Brooklyn. He walked to the Barclays Center. He was a perfect fit for what they were doing, and he's getting this moniker as a great developer of players, but not necessarily the guy that can get you over the top. So maybe you think you can go get Ty Lue off of Doc Rivers' bench, but I don't think that that's a really fascinating situation for Ty Lue, although he might have his pick of other jobs. And if you know with new ownership that they're not going to necessarily be comfortable with you over the next 3 years, if you don't win it all next year, that's not a job you want to take. Whereas with Kenny Atkinson, you knew what you were getting. You knew what you had. With Sean Marks letting the dude go or them mutually agreeing to separate, I wonder why now? Why in March? The playoffs are in a month. If you were going to do this, Do this back in December or do this right after the All-Star break. Have a John Beilein-like situation with Cleveland, but we all know why John Beilein wasn't working out with Cleveland. He could not actually interact with the players after calling them thugs, even by accident, and I think that he did call them by accident. I also think that's not a thing that you easily come back from, especially when you know you're dealing with grown men who can really take it out on you, and the NBA is much more of a players' league than it is a coaches' league or even an owners' league, depending on who you want to talk to, because we're all really going, what's James Dolan doing with the Knicks? Because none of us like James Dolan, but he's winning because he makes all this money. But your approval rating is never going to be as high in the NBA as an owner as it might be in the NFL for like Jerry Jones, right? We're even talking about Dan Snyder in a good way because you hired Ron Rivera, even as they're thinking about drafting Tua Tagovailoa after trading up to go get Dwayne Haskins last year. Getting back to Brooklyn, I'm looking at this, I'm going, Mike Budenholzer is the same guy that Kenny Atkinson is. He's just got better players. So if we're really thinking about what Brooklyn could be next year, shouldn't we be thinking about what they're doing right now with the guy that they have? Because when you don't have Kyrie Irving, who seems to be eternally broken, and you don't have Kevin Durant, who's coming off of a torn Achilles, who might not be the player that he once was, and you're going to have to add at least one other piece to that in a DeAndre Jordan that wants to play with those guys, and by play with those guys, I mean be on the floor with them, and you're going to have to try to navigate the relationships between those guys and what's best for the team, like Jared Allen getting more minutes. You're not like, you're a piece away, but are you a Kevin Durant piece away? Are you a blown Achilles from one of the better players to ever play this sport away? No, I don't think that team's going to win an NBA title next year. I don't think that they have the personality. I don't think that they have the moxie. It's not as if LeBron James is joining the Brooklyn Nets, because when we talk about Kevin Durant, we talk about one of the great players in the NBA. We also talk about a host of problems. We talk about a guy who absolutely does not want to see the spotlight go anywhere else but on him. I think he's cancerous to your basketball team, and instead of wielding his star power in a way that could help the team, saying, no, Kenny needs to be the guy, why do we fire Kenny? He's just going to let it go so that you can go get who? You didn't want Scott Brooks to be your dude. You didn't want Billy Donovan to be your dude. You made Steve Kerr your dude for a second, and then you told them that you wanted to get out of there, in large part because you didn't think that they were treating you the way that you should be treated. And I'm going, you're a superstar. You play with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. You have it the best that it's ever going to be, and you chose to blow that up. And now Brooklyn is left holding the bag because they made the trade, and they sent D'Angelo there, and I'm not sure that I would ride for D'Angelo still being a net because he's such a ball-dominant guy, and he has to have the ball to be great, and he didn't last with Golden State. They traded him for Andrew Wiggins, who's a different kind of suck. We're talking about a PER in line with Matt Bonner. And you know who's looking really good right now? Bob Myers, Steve Kerr, and Golden State. Because they were able to flip that Kevin Durant switch with D'Angelo into Wiggins, and they're going to build for next year, and they might end up with the number one overall pick in a crappy draft, but still, the number one pick is worth something. A top 5 lottery pick is worth something, especially when you know you get Klay Thompson coming back from an ACL, which I think is a better injury than an Achilles tear. I've never seen a guy come back from Achilles tear and be 100% the guy that he was. We've seen guys come back from ACLs and be 100% of the guys that they were. And because Klay's game is such a two-way type of game, meaning he can play defense and he can knock down shots, I think I'm a little hesitant to say he's going to be the defender that he once was, with the lateral movement being such a big part of being a great perimeter defender. But knocking down shots, we know he can knock down shots. Draymond Green is going to help you, right? We know who Steph Curry is. Now I'm wondering, whoever is running the Brooklyn Nets, why are you flexing? What is this? Why is this your deal? Why do you want to get the guy up out of there that means the most to what you've been building? This is like Philly, if they're getting ready to get off of Brett Brown because it just ain't a-working with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid when they're healthy. It just ain't a-working. And you went and got Tobias Harris. You went and got Al Horford. Neither one of those guys is really turning you into a championship team. You might end up in the Eastern Conference Finals, but you're going to get wiped clean by Giannis Antetokounmpo and a beta that's Chris Middleton. You know, with Pat Connaughton and Eric Bledsoe, and who are these dudes? But yet, Philly was supposed to be that squad. Now, we talk about what they might have had with Toronto last year, and they're a bounce away from being in the NBA Finals, but you know what? It didn't bounce their way. And now Toronto is coming back off of. What's the difference between Kenny Atkinson and Nick Nurse? Right? And this is not to disparage Mike Budenholzer, Nick Nurse, Frank Vogel, or Eric Spoelstra. I think they're all phenomenal basketball coaches. But they aren't that much better than Kenny Atkinson, especially when you take into account what he's meant to the NBA. And apparently NBA insiders have said, hey, this has been kind of in the works for some time. Why? What do you hope to gain from this? I don't get it. I just wish that Kyrie Irving and or Kevin Durant would have flexed their superstar muscle to try to ride for a guy that might be better for the organization, if not better for them. But if they're going to be selfish about it, that's the reason why I don't think that they're going to win championships. They both got rings, right? The knock on them is they can't do it by themselves. And they're not going to be able to do it by themselves playing together at Brooklyn. I don't see who won here except perhaps Kenny Atkinson, who's probably going to walk into a really great situation at some place next year. One of those might be, I thought, Oklahoma City, but Billy Donovan is playing himself into the coach of the year, or coaching himself into the coach of the year conversation, and probably into an extension. But you're going to look around. Oh, I take that back. Greg Popovich is probably the guy that's cut above. Now that I really thought about that, Greg Popovich can stand apart from everybody else in the league. Steve Kerr. Those two dudes. That's it. Now you might look around, if you're Kenny Atkinson, see an Orlando team you might want to take over, right? Not Charlotte. Charlotte's trash. Maybe Cleveland, but I doubt it, even though that seems like the fit right away because they're a young team and he's great with young players. And if Dan Gilbert is willing to be patient with him, it could be good. But today, right now, the Brooklyn Nets are the losers in this thing, even as Kenny Atkinson has to pack it up and find a new place for a new job. Sucks.